We have this great story of the two disciples on their travel from Jerusalem to Emmaus in Luke's 24th chapter of his gospel. We encounter this story, it's not really a story, a recounting of their trip several times in the life of the church. For it's a great and profound story for us all as it applies to us in our own faith journeys in our lives. To examine how it applies to us, we look at the details in this story as recounted by Luke of these two disciples and their encounter with Christ. Beginning there on the first day of the week, it's that Easter Sunday, the same day, the first day that Mary Magdalene, the women described in this narrative, who goes to the tomb. It's the same day, the day of the resurrection, that these disciples are leaving Jerusalem, leaving God's holy city, this city, Jerusalem, that's been the focus, the center of Luke's entire gospel. As all peoples are being called into God, into his temple, into worship, into one communion with God. And these two disciples are leaving. Now, historians and biblical scholars don't really know what Emmaus is or was. Some predict or guess that it was maybe a Roman military outpost, which makes the dynamic of the story all the more powerful. For these two men are leaving God's holy city and going to this earthly power, going to this place perhaps of safety and comfort in earthly terms. Why? Because their faith is shaken. Their faith is shaken that the one they put all their hopes and trust in is gone. He is crucified, dead. And not only that, but to add insult, his body is missing from the tomb. And it's in this background, this point in their lives as they're leaving Jerusalem, they're heading to this place, not God's city, that they encounter this man. And one of the main points, this first main point we see is that they stop. They're going the wrong way, and they stop. This is applicable to us all as well, because before they or we can turn around and head back to where we're supposed to be going, we need to stop heading the wrong way in the first place. So this first action of these two disciples, in their moment of weakness, in their shaken faith, is to stop. And they allow God to come to them. And then we have this great irony that Luke gives to us, that these two men speaking to Christ say, "Do you not know of all the things that have taken place in Jerusalem these days?" The irony being, of course he knows. He's the only one who knows. Nobody else seems to get it. Yet these two disciples are going to tell him all about it. And so they recount to him, to Christ, the details of his own life that anybody could believe, even non-believers, even those with the weakest of faith. Even if you were an atheist or an agnostic or whatever you want to call yourself, that you could verify with history to say that, yes, this man, Jesus, was from Nazareth. He was a prophet. He was a teacher. He went to synagogues and proclaimed the Jewish scriptures. And he was handed over, and he was crucified under Pontius Pilate. All of this, we have historical, verifiable evidence. And even more so in their time, they would have saw it and witnessed it with their own eyes. And there was a messianic hope within the Israelite scriptures that one would come and deliver the people of Israel from the hands of their foreign oppressors, Rome, but also deliver them from the power of Satan and sin. But something else happens. This body, the body of their Messiah, the one they had placed their hope in, not only was it killed on the cross, but now it is missing from the grave. And they're told that not only did he die, but now he is alive. And with that information, everything that they knew before and everything that they learned that day, they leave. They leave Jerusalem. It's too much. And what's Christ's response? Fools. How foolish you are. And that reply is to us as well as to them. We who fall into that same trap of seeing only the details and missing what is taking place right before our eyes, just as these disciples did, just as all of the disciples who abandoned Christ did. And so beginning with Moses, going down through all the prophets, Jesus recounts that promise that God had made and fulfilled in their midst. That it isn't just a bunch of historical events that took place, but this is God's hand at work right in front of their face, and they missed it. That God has come alive before them, and they could not see. And that this mystery, the veil, is pulled back when Christ takes, blesses, breaks, and gives that fourfold formula of the Eucharist when he instituted that great gift on the night of the Last Supper. And he gives them himself once again in that paschal sacrifice, the sacrifice of the altar. And our gospel says their eyes were opened. What they couldn't see before due to a shaky faith was revealed. Everything had become clear. That it wasn't just a bunch of historical facts. It wasn't just it wasn't a timeline that they had memorized. But this was a reality of a God being present with them, for them. And what did they do? They turn around. They go back to Jerusalem. They say, were our hearts not burning within us? And so they return to Jerusalem to unite themselves with the church, unite themselves with the other disciples gathered, glorifying God who is risen from the dead. The men go back to God's city with their faith renewed and strengthened. They were weak because they did not believe what Christ had taught through the prophets, and that his suffering and his death would be the price of our salvation. But when they stopped and listened and received Jesus in his teaching of Scripture and the breaking of the bread and the Eucharist, their fears were removed and they were able to return to their life of discipleship, living and sharing the gift of faith that they had received. This gospel today is about the Mass and our need to stop. It's so hard in our lives, so much going on. To take that 1 hour a week that little bit of time every day to stop and be with God. And to listen to his word, to allow him to illuminate, to remove the scales from our eyes, to pull back the veil that prevents us from seeing his hand at work in our lives, rather than just a bunch of random occurrences that are taking place. Perhaps thinking that we are in control and that God has nothing to do with it. And not only to stop and to listen, but to see and receive him in the breaking of the bread at the Eucharist. If we or anybody who claims to be a Christian follower of Christ does not do this, does not stop and listen, see and receive, then you will have a shaky faith. And you too will wander away from not an earthly city of Jerusalem, but that heavenly Jerusalem, where Christ the Messiah gloriously awaits upon his throne of victory over sin and death, where he wants only one thing: for us to be with him forever.